Welcome back to Twin Tech. I hope you enjoyed In Room this morning and anything else you've been doing today. Technology is at the center of everything we need to be thinking about, how we use it, where we use it, for what purposes, ethics and all, and in particular, competing in the age of AI. I was introduced to Professor Karim Lakhani earlier this year by our great friend, Twinian John Power. John's an alum of the Harvard Business School, and he said there's somebody that you have to meet. The two of you are looking at issues that are very similar, and Karim has by far the best book on the market today about how business leaders, policymakers should be thinking about artificial intelligence. Well, he was right, and I have my copy of the book here. All of our Twin patrons, by the way, will receive a copy of Karim's book. So without a lot more to do, I'd like to turn the floor over to Karim Lakhani, and then near the end, I might come back with a question or two. With this, I'd like to bring to our screen Professor Karim Lakhani. Professor Lakhani, join me.
Thank you so much, Rob. Real pleasure to be here with you and to engage with your community. Okay, hopefully now you can see my deck. And so this is Competing in the Age of AI. And I want to first start with definitions, because definitions are important for us. There's a lot of hype around AI, and most of this hype is around what we call strong AI. Machines that can think and act in a way that matches or surpasses human intelligence. This perspective is what we see in science fiction, what we see happening in movies, in novels and so forth, sentient machines. This is not the AI we're talking about in our book. The AI we're talking about in our book is what's known as weak AI in computer science, which is any activity computers are able to perform that humans once performed. And think of this as very narrow algorithms doing one thing and one thing only, narrowly, but doing it really well. And then deploying that at scale is what enables companies to do some pretty incredible things. So let me give you a couple of quick examples of weak AI. One of my favorite examples these days comes from JD Digits in China. This is about livestock counting, right? And how do you create new services for farmers in China around insurance? So this is insurance for pigs. And what they started to do was, the Chinese government asked them to create solutions for the Chinese farmers. And they said, oh, one thing we can do is offer pig insurance for the health of the pigs and so forth. And they quickly found that it was going to be very difficult to keep count of pigs and also keep track of pigs because they all look alike. So they then put in facial recognition technology for pigs, and then use that to create a whole range of new financial services around pig health, pig feed, and so on and so forth. And so this was JD Digits trying to apply AI and change their business model and their operating model. Basically taking off-the-shelf algorithms and going to market with brand new services for their customers. Another example of this is a paper from my lab. This is a paper we published in a leading cancer journal, where we showed that we could in fact be as good as an average Harvard radiation oncologist to outline lung cancer tumors. Now, the interesting thing here is we did this in 8 weeks. For $55,000 as part of a crowdsourcing contest that we ran around the world, and we had labeled data coming in from the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And the thing to note is the winners of this contest took code and algorithms from self-driving autonomous vehicle software and applied it to open source code and applied it to the lung cancer setting. And again, if I, as a business school professor, now can write a paper in a leading cancer journal, it tells you that the world has changed. The world has changed in a radical way because we have AI available, weak AI available, and now we need to start thinking about where do we apply it? What are the problems we can apply this technology to? So a great example of a company that has done amazing things around weak AI is Ant Financial. They're going to IPO this fall. They have at the moment 1.4 billion users and only 10,000 employees. So the scale at which they work is unbelievable. So 10,000 employees, half of them are technology folks that run the entire enterprise. Some very interesting statistics about them. They have a 3-1-0 process to get an account. 3 minutes to apply, 1 second approval, 0 human intervention. again, you can start to imagine that this looks pretty different as a company compared to the banks we have in all over the U.S. Right? I think my Bank of America probably would need like 50 million employees to serve 1.4 billion customers, just given the ways in which they work. And so Ant has basically taken a payments platform in Alipay and then have applied the same data from that platform to create a social credit system, investment bank, a money market fund, and so on and so on. And the way we want to think about this is we see AI impacting both a company's business model, how it creates value and how it captures value, but also its operating model, how it achieves scale, scope, and learning. And both of these things are important. And for companies, we see that AI presents great opportunities in both of these spaces. So if we look at something like Ant uses AI massively to drive digital scale, scope, and learning. They're a platform. They have hundreds of millions of consumers, thousands of merchants, millions of merchants, but also millions of other financial services providers that can use the Ant platform to get transactions with the consumers. To achieve this scale, you have to basically rethink your entire organization. You have to put data, analytics, and AI at the center of the organization, and the humans are the edges designing the systems, but the day-to-day operations are being done through an automated perspective and through automation in a big way. And Satya Nadella has sort of said this very nicely: AI is the new runtime that's going to shape all that we do. So what is the logic of Ant? What Ant is doing for digital learning, and this is the logic we see across a whole range of organizations, is the more data we get, the better algorithms we build. The better algorithms we build, the better services we have. The better services we have, the more usage we get, the more data, the better algorithms. This logic, by the way, is not just exclusive to Ant. All of the big GAFAs of the world, the FANGs of the world, have the same logic. And that's why they keep innovating both in terms of their operations, but also in terms of their products and services, because their logic is to see us more and more and come up with newer services in order for us to be able to give them the data that they need to then create the new services. At the core of these companies, I'm going super fast, so excuse me as we make up for lost time. At the core of this company is an AI factory. This AI factory is what drives decision-making throughout an enterprise. AI factories do three things really well. They do predictions, they do pattern recognition, and then they do process automation. And if you think about your own enterprise and think about all the people that are making some prediction about customer churn, customer entry, customer exit, employee entry, employee exit, employee promotion, pricing, inventory, lots of predictions are being done in most organizations. The AI factory helps accelerate that process and converts what are typically craft-based processes in Excel sheets, right, through email or even through Dropbox folders, and converts it into an industrial process for predictions, industrial process for pattern recognition, and industrial processes for process automation. And that's what drives the operating model core of an organization then, where data, software, algorithms, APIs are what is at the core of the company, not manual processes of getting things done. So what happens in these kinds of organizations is they're platform-based businesses. I'm sure you've seen many of these graphs. Platform-based businesses have network effects. Network effects increase in value as more and more users come on board. With AI, we can greatly sharpen the network effects. We can make it such that, in fact, this sharpening enables us to deliver both more value, but also capture more value for our organizations. And what we see happening in our economy today is a collision between digital business models that are AI first, analytics first, AI at the core, organized with data available across the entire enterprise, colliding with the traditional product businesses, which have been effective for the past 150 years as corporations, but they've been set up as silos of data, silos of operations, and very difficult for us to cut across these silos. And this is the collision that we see over and over again. And we've seen this Marriott versus Airbnb. We've seen this Ford versus Waymo. We've seen this HSBC versus Ant Financial, right? And we see this today with Moderna in the vaccine business and Pfizer in a traditional, pharmaceutical business. The point I want to make here, and with this, I'm going to end here. Then we can take some questions. I've got plenty more slides that I can send you later. But the point here of this collision is that traditional product companies have a tough time understanding exponential processes. These exponential processes take some time, but then they accelerate, and as they accelerate, they can very rapidly overtake us and subsume our capabilities. This, by the way, is exactly what's been happening with COVID, right? COVID also is an exponential process, and our hospital capacity, our government capacity, our corporate capacity to deal with this is fixed and limited. And just as the world has seen what happens when we underestimate exponential processes, when we don't understand exponential processes, we get disaster, this crazy lockdown that we're living in today, this crazy shutdown of the economy that we're living in today. The same dynamics are at play with digital businesses. They put into play platforms and with AI, exponential processes, and when they achieve takeoff, they are in many ways unstoppable sometimes. And this is the issue that we all face in traditional organizations. We have to learn to skip from the blue line to the red line, and that is a large issue for us in terms of organizational change, in terms of leadership, in terms of strategy. My belief is, in many ways, we're living in this age of AI. The nature of competition is going to change because we're living in this age of AI. But the big challenge in front of us is the organizational transformation. Technology, to me, is in many ways achievable. The playbook is out there. What it requires is organizational transformation and leadership to be able to avoid these collisions that we see across a whole range of industries. So with that, I'm going to stop, Rob, and take some questions.
Thanks so much for that. You're right. It was a whirlwind of a much deeper book, and gives us all hopefully the impetus to go and read the book. I was fascinated when I read through it about the notion of an AI factory. It's a metaphor that I think resonates with a lot of traditional companies. And you started talking about leadership, change management, and all those issues near the end. What's some advice that you give to leaders of traditional enterprises in order to navigate?
Yeah, great question, Rob. Look, I think first I'm going to make an outlandish claim, right? We're not going to be living in a world of less data or less AI going forward. And in fact, the COVID crisis has accelerated this. So if that is the case, if you believe that outlandish claim, and I don't think it's that outlandish, but I want to sort of make a point, like we're not going to be living with less data, less AI going forward, then the question for us as leaders is, how do we actually change our organizations to take advantage of these technologies? I think the AI factory is going to be necessary, but not sufficient for competitive advantage and survival. Everybody will need it. The AI factory is pretty much going to look the same in most industries, right? But we have to learn to build this. Building these AI factories will require access to data across your entire enterprise. That's a big fight, right? If we're living in a siloed world, getting access to all of our data across the enterprise is going to be a big fight. And that's going to be leaders coming down and sort of saying, we need integration of our data. We need integration of our algorithms. And we now need to rethink our processes. We need to rethink our processes. I think my belief is we're at the same place where we were in the Industrial Revolution. We went from craft-based production to factory-based production. Now I believe the same thing is going on with decisions, predictions, pattern recognitions, mostly cognitive tasks that we have let people do on their own, individually, not at scale. All the FANGs and GAFAs of the world are showing us that there's a different way to organize, and very quickly, all of us will have to figure this out for ourselves. And so technology, you have to make the investments. It's money, you got to throw money at it. Yes, I get it, right? But the hard part is going to be the courage to rethink the organizational structure and follow through on that.
So regarding courage and regarding, you mentioned a big fight as industry ecosystems are ripped apart and reconfigured in different ways. We're all familiar with the big tech, the FANGs coming in and challenging traditional ecosystems. But again, back to traditional companies, are there things they can do to change the big fight into perhaps a big collaboration, in the sense that if I need access to data you have and you need access to data I have, How can we do so in a way that everybody at least agrees? Whether everybody wins or not is another issue.
Yeah.
And then how do we, what is the responsibility of business with respect to the individual? And I know those are two very different questions.
Yeah, so on the first one, look, first, I believe it has to be a top-down mandate, and a mandate that is followed through on by the C-suite, right, of this data sharing story. But then with that also, people often say, like, how do I get started? I often say, look, start with customer value. What use cases would deliver customer value first? Okay, focus on that. Then create your project, but make that project only 3 months or 4 months, right? Build the prototypes that you think are going to deliver customer value with AI and with data, but only make it a 4-month project max. But have a condition in place that says, if the pilot works, how do we implement and how do we scale? Right? Both of those things have to be forethoughts, not afterthoughts. They have to be plugged into the way you do your projects. And if you have an implementation mindset and a scaling mindset, then all of a sudden it becomes very easy for you to say, okay, we've implemented this, let's go and scale again. Let's go implement more and scale. So this, I think I see so many zombie AI projects. The reason is because they're, we tried this, and it was like, it's cute, but it's not scalable. It's cute, but not implementable, because we haven't done the hard work of implementation thinking beforehand. That, I think, is what I think the internal organizations need to do. Look, we could spend a whole day talking about digital ethics, right?
Yes.
And the role around data. So just as what I showed you, just as we can scale the benefits of AI, we can also scale the harm of AI in the same way, right? We can do bias at scale. Before, bias was maybe at a local branch at a bank. Now you can, if you have AI algorithms trained off those people, we can bias against the whole country, right? Those create massive issues for, again, the C-suite and for leaders. And I believe that this has to be built right in. We can't be sort of like, after the fact, go to our legal office and say, oh, please help us figure this out. It's too late. We have to design.
Well, that's okay with the legal office, because all you have to do, you just know they're going to say no. So you don't really, it's not an issue.
Or it might already be the market, right? And then you're even worse off, right?
Worse shape, yeah.
Yeah. So this is where, again, the building for fairness, equity, responsibility, and ethics from day one into your business process and your AI processes.
Well, so I'd love to come back to that another time if you'd be open to it, because just this morning and in the room we had Michael Shraga, who's been with MIT for some time, a great friend, a great Twinian. Vivek Wadhwa has been with us probably 5 times. He was with us today. And I think we could have a really interesting deep dive into ethics of AI. It's something that we all need because we're all trying to get our bearings. But I'd love for you to offer, do you have an example of an established company, an incumbent that seems to be doing things right, that seems to be figuring some things out that we could take a cue from?
Yeah, I'll give 2 examples, and they're both in the media space. I think Comcast, the slow, drudgy cable company, has actually done an amazing amount of work to respond to the fact that Netflix and Hulu and online over-the-top stuff is coming and consumers are leaving. So they've built a platform, they've enabled AI analytics throughout the enterprise, and you sort of see them trying to transform. I think it's a really good example of that. Simply the pressures of Netflix, pressures of Hulu, and all the other cable companies now going online has made them change, and they've done a really nice job of that. I think another good example actually is Disney, right? Disney Plus has figured out, right? They did acquisitions, and they really rethought like the customer experience, right? Again, we have to start with I think people start with silos, right? And then optimize the customer experience on their silo instead of saying, no, let's start with the customer. The customer doesn't really care about your silos. They don't give a damn about your silos, but we all want to start with our silo and silify the customer instead of saying, what do we have to offer? And then how do I make this happen? And again, if I go back to Comcast, they swallowed the bitter pill saying, we're going to make Netflix available on Comcast. Oh my goodness, right? And I'm sure they figured out the business dealings with Netflix to make that palatable, but it's getting that mindset across that I don't want them to go off my platform. I want to make these services available to them across our silos and across our ecosystem. So those are, I think, examples.
Maybe a process that I'm interpolating from your response is, number one, start with the customer. which of
Yes.
course has a whole bunch of issues like who is the customer, that might be changing. Who are the decision makers? What are they really after? What's the value they're really trying to achieve? Like your great colleague, Clay Christensen, used to say, what is the job people are buying your product for? You might not know. You might think you know. So start with the customer and then say, given all the opportunities of technology and capabilities and where it's going, what would be the best way to solve that? And then look back at your organization and say, my goodness, we don't have what it's going to take. Or we have this piece that is great and this piece that's not. Rather than, let's look at the stuff we have now and how we can tweak it to make it work. Because that's a losing proposition.
Exactly. Like the slide that I flashed very quickly, the business model, value creation and value capture. I separate them out. You first start with value creation. What is the value? Why is the customer going to come to you and transact with you instead of your competitor, right? What is the value creation first? And then we figure out value capture. And there's many different ways to figure out value capture. But I think starting with the customer first, but really saying customer value and being skeptical of your own marketing. Like companies, they love us. I'm like, really? They really love you? Are you sure? If I offered them $100, would they leave you? Right? And be really skeptical of your own marketing.
By the way, Karim, it reminds me of a fabulous quip from my colleague Mohan Sani at Kellogg, who's always good with a quip. He was asked by a major airline, and we all love them, right? Why are you so loyal to our airline? And he said, I'm not a loyal customer, I'm a captive customer.
Yes.
So, there's a difference.
Exactly.
So understanding why. So what is one thing, I mean, the one thing that I would recommend everybody do who's interested in grappling with this space is buy your book, read it through and say, what does AI Factory mean in my context for my organization? And go out and think hard about the customer. What is one other thing you would recommend for leaders of organizations to do?
Yeah, I think I would say get ready for the change transformation journey. I mean, I think people fetishize the technology instead of fetishizing the change. And the change journey is brutal. It's tough. It won't be easy, right? I was just talking to a large bank in Europe this morning, and they were like so many silos. We don't know what to do. I go, hey guys, you are at the top. You guys get paid the big bucks to figure out these problems. If you don't meld these silos together, right, your friends will be waiting to take you over. I think the organizational side is very critical.
I could not agree more, and it's really hard to overcome that. But don't worry, the marketplace will do it to you if you don't. So,
very easily.
Sit back and relax. So, Karim, I mean, there's so much great stuff here. I love the way you use metaphors, and I encourage my students and others I work with to think about those metaphors and translate them. Collision, courage, zombie AI projects. How do we ensure we don't have zombie AI projects? And by the way, keep in mind that some people think AI will eventually create zombies. That's a whole philosophical discussion that we'll have to go to a different department at Harvard to talk about this. Will this be a big fight or a big collaboration? Start with the customer value. A quick story from my own experience. 2 years ago, I was speaking with a major bond rating company, and they were all excited, understandably, about a team they had put together, a SWAT team, to take a 2-month process from the point a customer signs a contract to the point they've completed and delivered. They said, let's take it from 2 months to 2 weeks. And I said, that's great. What if somebody does it in 2 minutes?
Yes.
You've now wasted that entire 6-month process to get down to 2 weeks if someone goes to 2 minutes. And what they discovered was, with exactly what you're talking about, Professor Lakhani, with artificial intelligence, that kind of 2-minute response time is going to be imminently possible within just the next few years.
And it's imagination. We need imagination. I think we need imagination. Like, I mean, again, I think this example you gave is like, it said, oh, we can get to 2 weeks. It's like, or 2 days. Like, really?
Right.
Like, how about 2 seconds, right? And so that requires imagination. And that again, I think is where your leaders need to take action.
Absolutely agree. Well, imagination again, courage, collision. This is where we unlock the inner child and go out and serve our customers and make a lot more money in a good way. Thanks so much, Professor Lakhani. I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you, Rob. Look forward to it as well.
Great. So if that doesn't fire you up to go out and get really smart about artificial intelligence quickly, if you're not already, I don't know what will. I encourage you to take a look at Professor Lakhani's book. And I'd be interested in any conversation you might want to have about this AI topic in your own companies and industries, because this is one of the paramount trends of the next couple of decades.